and webinar. My name is Tembani Malabella here in FAO in Rome. Our colleagues will introduce themselves and they will be able to tell you where they are. A bit of some housekeeping for this webinar. You do not have, as participants, an ability to speak because we can't control your sound quality. But after the presentation, you will have the chance during the presentation to type in questions. Our speakers will not be able to answer your questions during the presentation, but they will do so after the presentation. So what we will do, from this time on, we will allow our presenters to present this material and then show us a demo, and then I will come in and call in for questions for those that are there. We will take a few questions, or the ones that we can fit in the time, and then we will make sure that you have answered. Okay, so I hope everything is ready. For now, I present you to our presenters, Julie and her team. They will introduce themselves. And Julie, it's your time. The webinar is recorded, and you will be able to access emails that we have sent and on our platform. So from now on, Julie, it's your time. Welcome to this webinar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tembani. And thank you to the FAO for giving Harvesting, our team, this opportunity to discuss these issues with you. And thank you everyone for joining us in this discussion. So as Tembani mentioned, what we're going to discuss today is how to drive and create financial inclusion using smallholder farmers using satellite data and machine learning. So my name is Julie Chang. I'm the Director of Financial Inclusion at Harvesting, and my background is in financial inclusion. And I've analyzed and invested in microfinance institutions and other types of financial institutions in many countries in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and the Balkans, both for funds, investment funds like Blue Orchard, as well as DFIs. So today I'm going to give just a very brief overview of and context of the situation. So many of these statistics are probably familiar to those on the call, but again, just to give an overview. There are some 500 million smallholder farmers throughout the world, and some 2 billion people, a quarter of the world's population, live in those smallholder farmer households. And those farmers together contribute some 80% of the food supply in developing countries. And they require some $400 billion in financing needs, in credit needs actually. But today, only 7% of those smallholder farmers actually have access to finance. So some 90% of smallholder farmers and their households do not have access to financing today. So why finance smallholder farmers? Why would a financial institution be interested in a smallholder farmer? Well, they have needs, obviously. So in terms of short-term loans, they could buy improved inputs like quality fertilizers and certified seeds. And they can use long-term loans as well to buy micro-irrigation systems, for example, or do crop renovation for their cocoa or coffee plants. And improved inputs have been proved to improve farmer yields, which can thus improve farmer incomes. Some studies show by 80 to 140%. So that's at the smallholder farmer level, the household level. But if we think even more at a macro level, the world's population is expected to increase, and the demand for food, the supply for food will increase some 70% over the next 30 years. So how can we contribute to smallholder farmers' contribution to that food supply? The problem is, unfortunately, that smallholder farmers today are amongst the most underserved communities in the world. And they typically lack access to markets to sell their products, to inputs that they can afford, and to financing. And the lack of access to financing the challenge is a lack of information, an information asymmetry. Potential lenders don't have information about smallholder farmers to make a credit assessment to then provide a loan. So why is that the case? How come there's no actionable information for lenders? Well, think about what a traditional lender looks at. A financial institution bases their assessment, credit assessment, on a potential borrower, typically again for banks or traditional banks, on the transaction history of a potential borrower. What are the deposit and withdrawal activity of the savings account of that borrower? What is their past credit history? Are they defaulters or good borrowers? Do they pay on time? But as we discussed, smallholder farmers don't have access to loans, and they don't typically have bank accounts. They don't have that activity that banks like to use to make credit assessments, and they're not part of the formal sector. So they don't have typically utility bills, water bills, electricity bills, and they don't have salary slips. So they don't have paper trails. And even more recent platforms, there's new alternative lending platforms, fintechs, that use social media footprints or digital footprints to lend to underserved clients in urban areas. But they rely on a potential borrower having a smartphone. And most farmers, they don't have smartphones. And if they did have smartphones, it might be shared amongst multiple users, multiple households. And in where they live in remote areas, electricity is scarce and expensive, and internet and connectivity is scarce and expensive. So again, they don't have the digital footprint or the social media footprint that these newer models are using to provide credit scoring. And so again, the smallholder farmer is left out of that financial service. And then of course, by definition, a farmer is typically located in a remote area or far from an urban center and in low population density areas. And there can be mountains between a bank branch and that farmer. So if you think about banks, especially developing countries, they may have bank branches in capital cities and maybe smaller cities, but they don't have a branch in a village. And so they're only going to serve around, let's say, a 30-kilometer radius around the branch. And if you live beyond that branch, it's just too costly to serve that type of client, that farmer who may live more than 30 kilometers from the branch. And even if financial institutions realize and understand the potential market in smallholder farmers, and they decide they want to serve that community, their credit officers, who may be well trained in serving micro entrepreneurs and SMEs in town, they don't have the skills, the experience to do an agricultural loan, which requires a different set of skills and training to understand what if the technical capacity, the management capacity of the farmer and his farm. So again, another disincentive for financial institution, another cost to get into this, to make agricultural loans, especially to smallholder farmers who would take smaller loans in a large farm. So this is the challenge, and it's information asymmetry, and it's how the founder of CEO, his name is Ruchir Garg, he's an entrepreneur and engineer by training and background. He grew up in India, and his grandfather was a farmer. So he understands that context and that challenge. But he also understands technology. And given the recent ongoing, let's say, developments, both on the hardware side and in the processing side, he set upon the idea of how to use that technology, how to use satellite data and processing improvements to create cost-effective and more accurate information on farmland activity at the farmholder level that lenders and other service providers could use. So about 2 years ago, when he started with the idea, with the team, built a very robust computing infrastructure that has the ability to acquire and, let's say, download data from multiple satellites simultaneously, and then process that data into actionable information for potential lenders and other service providers. So for example, if you give harvesting the latitude and longitude of your farm or geotag your farm, the remote sensing team can provide information about that farm, the number of crops that farmer has, now and historically, historic harvesting dates, future harvesting dates, the soil moisture of that farmland. Is it cultivated or fallow? So that's some of the data that the remote sensing team can provide. And all these data points can be used in throughout the loan process, from client verification of client data to inputs into a credit score, and then for loan monitoring purposes. So to go more in depth into the technical side, I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague Aparna.
Thank you, Julie. Hello, everyone. My name is Aparna Farke. I am remote sensing scientist and product manager at Harvesting, but also I am farmer. I am leading agricultural intelligence platform at Harvesting. My background is in agrotechnology, specifically in agriculture and remote sensing. My research areas focus on model and algorithm developments to derive advanced cropland information through remote sensing or satellite data. Today I will give you a brief introduction about Harvesting's agricultural intelligence platform. Harvesting's agri-lending suite provides several solutions for different phases of loan process, like pre-loan, loan decisioning, and post-loan. To develop these solutions, main need is the data. Data related to farm as well as data related to farmers. Data about farmers is usually available easily and certain, but data about farm is difficult to get, and financial institutions have to spend significant amount of time and resources to collect it by visiting individual farms personally. Our agricultural intelligence engine, called as AgIntel engine, provides such data about farm. It leverages remote sensing based satellite data and ancillary data to provide useful features to financial institutions. These features have information on farm's accessibility, like its distance to city, distance to road. Also, it has information on the crop growth conditions, for example, past and future dates of harvesting or past and future dates of planting. By providing such information, our agricultural intelligence engine platform forms a bridge between smallholder farmers who have less access to financial services and financial institutions who have difficulty in assessing farmers' risk. Our agricultural intelligence engine is built on supercomputing machine. It uses cloud platform with many virtual machines to process the data. It executes in 6 main phases. First is data collection phase, where it collects data from different satellites such as Landsat, MODIS, and Sentinel, and also collects ancillary datasets such as reference data. In second phase, this collected data is cleaned and pre-processed for its further phase. The cleaning and pre-processing involves removing cloud from satellite images as well as conversion of surface reflectance products of satellite to useful indices. In third phase, AgIntel engine processes this clean data to convert it into useful product features to be used by financial institutions. For this purpose, we use machine learning models such as random forest, support vector machines, as well as neural networks. Once the product features are ready, they are stored in secure data storage system. In next phase, the stored data features are shared using user-friendly data APIs, and they are served to be used for various end solutions. These end solutions can include different use cases, such as agri-lending, which is primary use case for harvesting. Also, farm alert and value-added services. This is also another primary use case for harvesting, where we develop farmland monitoring system in-house. Also, this data from AgIntel engine platform can be used for farm management purposes. Also, they can be used by governments for policy studies. Here you can see some current and potential global use cases of harvesting across different continents globally. Today we will demo some of our Ag Intel product features presenting farm-related information, including its accessibility to cropland-specific information such as crop type related to the specific farms. And these features will be demoed using our data APIs. Now my colleague Stephen will demo Ag Intel features and its use cases for farmland monitoring to you. Thank you. The mic is over, Stephen.
Thanks, Aparna. Hi everybody. I'm Stefan. I'm located in Berlin, in Germany. I am a physical geographer and focus on remote sensing and GIS, geoinformation systems. And I am working in the university for more than 10 years. I'm currently finishing my doctoral studies where I work with image processing and machine learning methods. And I do have a strong interest in subpixel analysis of fuzzy ecosystems and ecosystem transitions. And I am being with harvesting for more than a year as a remote sensing scientist and as an applied program, I would say. Now I stop sharing my screen here, and I'm connecting my secondary screen to show you a demo. Okay. In the next couple of minutes, I would like to demonstrate you how to gather field-related and crop-related information via Harvesting's agricultural intelligence engine, Ag Intel. The demo is placed at 3 sample locations in 3 continents, which you can see here on the Google Globe in South America, in Bahia, in Nigeria, in Africa, and in Asia, in West Bengal. The first example is the eastern part, or is located in the eastern part of Bahia state, in Brazil, near the South American Atlantic coast. I've arbitrarily selected one parcel, indicated by the red boundaries, where agriculture is obviously taking place. I'm sorry? So, as I said, I'm arbitrarily selected one parcel, which is indicated by this red boundaries here, where agriculture is taking place, obviously. And at this example, I would like to demonstrate the first bunch of application programming interfaces, the APIs, which are related to field biophysical parameters. In the background of these blue links here, we are going to call our Harvesting Ag Intel APIs, and the result will be displayed on the right-hand side into this browser window, on this browser window. By pushing this field size button, for example, we can estimate the size of a field. So in this case, the field will have an area of 0.57 hectares, approximately. We can have also an estimate on the elevation above sea level, which is 276 meters for this specific field. We can also have estimation, for example, for the slope of the terrain, which is, in this example, 1.77 degrees. So this field location can be rather referred to a very flat terrain. You can also very easily derive information on its administrative relation or subdivision. So we can see here, we do have information in different level of detail. On level 2, on a country level, so we are in Brazil. On level 4, on a state level, we are in Bahia, up to a very, very detailed level, which is Retiro level 9, which is just the accumulation of houses somewhere here. Or we can also place this field in its nearer or far geographical context. by calling the feature distance API. This API is calculating the distance to land and water features, which are, for example, related to the transportation or the transposal or disposal of the crop yield to the next market center. And here we can see, for example, the distance to the next primary road is about 5.3 kilometers. From scrolling out a bit, you can see that it's this distance to the street over there. Or we can have a distance measure to the next big city, to the next market center, which is Feira de Santana, which is about 23 kilometers away from our little theater. Just to name two examples. Now we are leaving South America and we are going to Africa. More specifically to Kano State in North Nigeria, which is situated in the Sahelian geographic region south of the Sahara. There we have selected a relatively small field, again in the red polygon boundaries here, with about 170 meters in width and 100 meters in height, where I would like to demonstrate you some further harvesting APs which are related to the temporal behavior of the crop. I'm going to open a time series graph now, which is also calculated with one of our, which also can be calculated with one of our APIs. And on this graph, on the y-axis, you can see the normalized difference vegetation index in the VI values. And the VI is a very common remote sensing vegetation index, which is giving us a measure of how green this field actually is, or how many crop actually is being grown on the field. The graph is referring to a time span of about 2 years, mid-2016 until the present. A phenological crop cycle in this example for 2017 may begin somewhere here by planting, then the crop is growing up to a very potent stage, and then it's going senescent before it's going to be harvested somewhere here. I'm also going to show you a further plot, which is a biomass plot over the last 17 years, just to demonstrate you the periodicity or the continuity of this process here. So we have a very constant and a very periodic behavior of our field in the last 17 years. And now we can have a look what our API algorithm are returning for the year 2017. We can derive information, for example, on how, as Julie said, on how many crops are grown in this specific part of land. It's getting faster, so I'm directly copying the link here. And the result will pop up very soon in the browser window. Okay, we can see we have a 1 value getting back from our API, which means we do have a 1 single crop grown into this specific field here. But we can also have a measure of planting and harvesting date. Just copying these both API links into the browser window and start the APIs. Starting over the harvesting date API here. So the algorithm which I'm calling right now are based on the time series information you have seen before and are calculating the planting date and the harvesting date, as I said. And these dates are getting back here, and we can see the planting in this specific example took place at April, 19th of April, or somewhere around 2017, and harvesting took place at the end of October, or in the turnaround to November. So assuming a very similar behavior over the years as we was seeing before on the time series graph, we can check this also very nicely on the very high resolution images from Google Earth here. Here you can see a high resolution image from Google Earth on October. And if I'm turning to a December image, which is that one, you can obviously see that harvesting took place. You can even see the nose laying around, these 5 little guys who are lying around here. So which is a good indication that harvesting took place. And at the end that our API was doing quite a good job. But we can also gather a very recent information in our fields. Let me copy the link on the field activity status into the browser. This API is predicting the current situation of the field. So the stage in which the field is situated currently, so it means today. In a couple of seconds, we'll have a result here, hopefully. And give me just 1 or 2 more seconds. Yeah, this field is currently, so today, the field activity is preparing for grain intake, which is indicated in our system by a 3, and which means harvesting will take place very, very soon. So we may also predict the future harvesting date and more with our in-house APIs. But here I want to close our Nigerian example and show you the last example, which is in Asia, West Bengal in India. I close that here. To get an idea, so I mean, yeah, no, I've selected a typical rice cultivation field. That one, which we are looking in detail here. In the area of western West Bengal state, where I would like to show you the derivation of field graph thematic parameters with harvesting Agentella APIs. To get an idea of how the situation may look like in situ, we can have also a look on this image here. So here on that image, I open it in the browser window. You're looking in a southerly direction. We can see these rice paddy fields. So a very typical example with the greenish and yellowish colors here in the front. But now, if we have APIs, we can also calculate the graph type name automatically for this given polygon. By pushing the graph type name API, we get the information that we are on a rice field with a major graph on this red polygon is rice. This is true for the Rabi season 2017 and 2018. And this information now can be fed into other APIs which we have. For example, that one, which is on the crop yield per season. With the input parameter of the season defined by our start date and end date, we use the Rabi season for this example, of course, and so the period from mid of October until mid of February. And this API returns the estimated yield with 1,500 kilograms per hectare within the Rabi period, which is now a categorization of medium to high yield in this region. And we finally can also compare the crop performance during a couple of fields. For this, I prepared a list of points or a list of locations which are referring to specific rice locations in the neighborhood. One is referring to our initial field, and our 10 I've selected 10 locations. And if I'm going to run this API will give us an estimate for all of these 10 pin locations. Give me just a couple of seconds more. And now you can see we do have values for all of these 10 fields. And Most of them are medium to high, as our initial field, which was that one. But two of them do have even a high yield, which is about 3,000 kilograms in terms of the second field, and even 3,500 kilograms in terms of the eighth field. So in doing this, we may compare the performance of graph yield in a very, very easy way. So we can do certainly more. For example, we can do classification of grasslands. We can measure the area of cultivated land. We can measure the crop water consumption or the soil moisture, as Julie already introduced. Or we can measure the biomass growth for arbitrary location and dates. But for today, I would like to stop demonstrating, and I would like to conclude very shortly. With harvesting's Agile APIs, we are able to put a lot of information together for fields or regions all over the globe. We can say where a field is located. We can estimate its biophysical parameters. We can derive its elevation above sea level or its slope of the terrain. For Brazil, I was showing you an orchard on a very flat terrain near to the next primary road and also near to the next market center, just to name examples. Moreover, we can say whether it is a problem or not. We are able to put this information into its temporal context. Here I hope I could convince you that with the example from Nigeria, that we were looking at a higher growing crop, probably a sorghum, cultivated as a single crop in the year. Planting took place in April 2017, and the field was harvested in the end of October 2017. And harvesting will very, very probably take place in the next couple of weeks. And finally, with harvesting crop type engine, we can go very specific for telling you the crop type. For West Bengal, I showed you that we are looking into a rice field in the Rabi season 2017-18. I showed you how easy it can be to derive crop yield values for a given season, and finally I tried to giving you a glance on the scalability of our system. So I'm finished. I hope you have a bit enjoyed watching the demo, and I will hand over to Mr. Tambani again to lead the discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for your presentation, and also for the other colleagues who gave us a very good overview of the harvesting, and we are happy, especially also as you can see from the questions. Okay, now we will open up the floor for questions from our participants. But there are some questions that we already have received. I will answer them quickly because some of them are easy to answer. This webinar has been recorded and will may be available to those that are registered on this webinar, and also to those that visit our website. And then secondly, there was a question. I'm trying to look for those that deal with us now. The one for certificate for attendance, we will deal with it on an individual case-by-case basis. Now we have questions related to the content of the presentation. Very interesting question I can pick now is one that is coming from Niel. Can we identify? Okay. Maybe we could separate this question, because I see most of the questions come from the technical end, and I'm trying to pick a question that doesn't deal with technical so that I can give also Julie and colleagues. Okay, I will take these questions because they seem all to be technical anyway. The interesting one is one from Leonidas. I am from Ecuador. Which crops have you worked with? Cocoa, banana, which specific crops have you worked with? I'm hoping this goes to Steph or to any of the colleagues. So you simply unmute your microphone and respond. Which crops have you
Aparna and Stefan?
Stefan?
Hi. Is it possible to repeat the question because it was not audible? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, which
What part?
I will read it. I am from which crops do you have you
Which crops